G'day, Professor Joseph Drew here. Writing a good abstract is so important to get a paper accepted. In this video, I share with you my recipe for writing a good abstract, and then I give you some examples of recent work so you can see how the recipe is used in real life. So, an abstract is the first thing that a desk editor is going to read. It's going to make them want to read more or turn them off. It is so critical that you construct an abstract that poses a problem, captures the editor's attention, tells them what your paper is doing, what it's all about, and gives them a reason to keep reading. And my recipe does exactly these things. So here's the recipe. Step 1, make a claim. My claims tend to be contentious. That grabs the editor's interest. Say what you're going to do. Signal, is this an empirical paper? Is this a theoretical paper? How are you going to go about it? Is this comparative work or not? 3, point to the result. Don't give them the result. Point to the result to capture the interest and give them an idea where this is heading. And step 4, most important, say why it's important. Tell the desk editor why, and the reviewers, why they should keep reading. You've got to capture their interest at this stage. And as I said in a previous video, a good abstract also sets up a template for you for a good introduction. All you do in the introduction is follow the same order, but instead of having one or two sentences on each thing, you have a paragraph or two on each thing. So here's some examples of some abstracts I've written recently. This first one is for a paper that's just been submitted. So here it is, and I've color coded it. The yellow is my claim. My claim is local government amalgamations aimed at improving financial sustainability remain a strongly contested public policy. Immediately the desk editor knows, oh, this is a paper about amalgamations. This is something that's still contentious. It's worth me reading, and it's probably worth the journal giving serious consideration to this paper. I have some other information there in white, and then in green I told the editor and the reviewers what I'm going to do. In this paper, we conduct a robust empirical investigation of a recent amalgamation program dominated by population size considerations. Now you'll notice there I don't say where it is. I don't say it's in New South Wales, Australia, because when you're going for foreign journals, it's best if you come from Australia to leave that as late as possible in your paper. I try not to mention Australia until at least section 2, perhaps section 3. By that time I've captured the reviewer's interest. I've got a chance. It's just a fact. Australia is a small country and most international journals aren't interested. In fact, I had a very prominent international academic journal write to me once and say, great paper, love the methodology, love your conclusion, but Australia is such a small country that we really don't think our readers will be interested. So at least some of them admit it. So consequently, if you want to get in the international journals as an Australian author, which is really, really hard, keep to yourself the fact that it's based on Australia until you've got their interest, and that's section 2, section 3, if you want my 2 cents. Coloured in blue, I'm now pointing to where these results are going to be heading. Our results suggest that local government boundaries constructed principally to secure scale benefits have largely failed to deliver on the pecuniary promise of architects. So I'm saying the amalgamations have been a disaster. They've not saved money. I haven't said the precise result, because if I said the precise result, which is the amalgamations resulted in costs going up by 11%, which is the case, why bother reading? You already know the answer. I'm just pointing to the fact that, hey, our results don't tally up with what the proponents of these amalgamations said they would. And in this last section here, I point to why we need to keep reading, why this paper is important, why this journal should publish this paper. And I say we conclude with some central public policy recommendations aimed at ensuring that future amalgamation programs might be more successful. So that's my whole objective. That's why I want readers and editors to read this, so that we can learn about how to do amalgamations better in the future. And in fact, I had a an editor from an A-ranked journal once remarked about one of the things they really liked about my work was that I always end up with a practical public policy recommendation at the end of it. And I've taken that feedback on board, and I tend to make a point of doing it at the end of every abstract. So this is an abstract for a journal paper that I've just submitted. Example 2 is an abstract from my recent book that I'm writing. It hasn't been published yet. It's called Natural Law and Government. I'm hoping for a subtitle that says something like After the COVID Revolution, play on Dahl's famous book After the Revolution. But that's something I've got to negotiate with my editor. Now, an abstract for a chapter is a little bit different. You've got more freedom, you've got more word limit. Okay, with journals, usually your word limit's 150 words. Some have 120, some have 200, but it's usually quite short. With a book chapter, you got more words, and also this book chapter is about theory. It's not about empirical work, so the structure is slightly different. But I still start with my claim, my contentious claim. Government is essentially a moral endeavour. Its sole justification is instrumental with respect to human flourishing. Now that comes off the work of the Papal Decrees. The whole reason, and this is what natural law philosophers believe, the whole reason for having government is that it can help us achieve our existential ends through promoting and developing the common good. So I've made that statement. A lot of people wouldn't agree with it. Natural law philosophers certainly would, and it would be a benefit to the community if everyone in government accepted the fact that government is fundamentally a moral endeavour. Okay, now in green I start saying what I'm doing. Excuse me, that goes through 2 sentences. So in this chapter I show how a simple change to frameworks, existing frameworks, would ensure that public policy interventions become reorientated towards the flourishing of people. So my argument is that existing evaluation structures for public policy don't look at the moral dimension at all. I'm showing you that how that's got to be factored into evaluative frameworks. And then also in the next sentence I say specifically what I'm going to do. I'm going to evaluate from a moral perspective mask mandates, lockdowns, and vaccine mandates. Now, I do not point to the answer in this chapter because by this stage, this is chapter 6 of my new book, I think, should be out midway next year. People probably already really know my position on this. If you watch my other videos, you know my position on this. You know that I don't believe vaccine mandates are moral. I do believe in the sanctity of human dignity, and I do believe that government should be a moral endeavour and should never intrude more than necessary on human dignity in the pursuit of the common good. Okay, in the last section, colour-coded pink here, I say why it's important. I conclude with a plea to urgently rectify the neglect in our extant policy evaluation frameworks in order that government might return to a focus on its sole reason to exist, which is for people to flourish. So there's a good reason to read this, because I'm going to show you how we need to get how we can get government thinking about moral issues again, acting as a moral guardian, acting in a way that respects human dignity, and that will get the attention of the reader and get them to keep reading, which is what we want. So I hope those 2 examples have given you a feel for how the recipe works. You don't have to stick to it precisely. Sometimes it'll be 2 sentences for a section, sometimes 1. Sometimes a step in the recipe might be absent entirely. It is going to be different for empirical papers. It's going to be different for theory papers. It's going to be different from book chapters to papers. But you've got the basic steps, and it gives you a framework to start with, and that's all you really need. A good abstract is critical. You're not going to get work accepted. The desk editor's not even going to keep reading if your abstract's really, really poor. You're selling your work. Remember that when you're writing an abstract, and it's got to be interesting. It's got to attract their attention, or you won't sell your work. It's as simple as that. So a recipe is not everything, but it's certainly a really good starting point, and I hope this helps you a lot. If you do find this useful, please give it the thumbs up, please subscribe, And please consider sending it to other people, your PhD students, other academics you might know. The whole purpose of this channel is to help you and help the community in a whole heap of different ways. I can only do that with your help. So please send it on. Thank you very much. Goodbye.